Shalom and welcome to Mystical Hebrew, the language of creation. I'm Tom Averna in Yeshiva B'nai Noach, and this is our final class for this particular look at the Hebrew alphabet. We'll take a look at the last four letters of Kuf to Tav, Kaf to Tav, and we will probably. I was going to add it to the end of this class, but I think that I will have another class or few classes after this, just reviewing and giving a synopsis of the letters in a little shorter format, similar to what I did at the beginning of the first class. But we'll see. At any rate, that's my goal from here on. But we will complete the class today with class 8. So now, as we conclude our journey with the last four letters, we have the Kuf, Resh, Shin, and Tav, the last four letters. The 19th letter of the Hebrew Aleph-Bet is the letter Kuf, or Kof. It is the Gematria of 100, and again the letter Kof. The Kof is the only regular letter that goes below the line. Of course, the final letters, many of them do, but of the regular letters, this is the only one that goes below the line. And as opposed to the Lamed, which is the tallest letter that goes above the line, this one deals with descending into the depths. The shape is made up of a Resh and a Tzayan, which can mean either Zar or Raz, strange or secret. This world is full of complications and hiddenness and falling sparks and feeling out of place, feeling like a stranger. And embedded within all the strangeness are secrets, the inner meaning and inner purposes. Our job is to find the strange and give meaning and purpose to it. Zion Resh is also the root for crown, Zair. Each Jew is crowned by God to be a leader and a tzaddik. Another alternate view is that the Kaf is made up of the Kuf, made up of the Kaf and the Nun. And in this we see the word Kavanah, which is prayer or intention. And that is also a part of the idea of the Kof. So its meaning of going down has to do with the righteous person who goes into the depths to find sparks of holiness and lifts them up. The idea of the growth and holiness. Kuf is the eye of a needle or hole in the axe blade for the handle. It's the meaning of the empty point of Tzimtzum, the contraction. The Kadosh begins with Kuf. The Kuf stands for holiness, Kadosh, and Klipa, which are the not so holy shells of physical reality that hold the fallen sparks of holiness. Two opposite meanings, but they are connected to our mission. It represents the soul coming down into the body to fulfill its mission, and also Kabbalah, receiving God's light and illumination. All of that part of the Kaf. Like the Samic, it also can mean to go around and around, kafah, or sacrifice, the korban, incense, the keteret, which is an acronym for kedusha, holiness, tachara, purity, rachamim, compassion, and tikva, hope. It's also the kaf, the monkey. The monkey represents vanity and the false imitations of this world and how it interacts with the world and the spirit. It is the idea of the monkey mind that you hear that phrase used in Buddhism, but the idea that it's the silliness that we are a part of in terms of our physical natures. Also, how it interacts with other letters. Leviticus 27:32 says, every 10th one shall be holy to Hashem, and Kuf is 10 times 10, extreme holiness. It also is Kol, the voice, or Kadosh, holiness, congregation, Kohelet, or even magic, Kesem. It has to do with the klipa, the outer shell, and in its 19-year cycle, adding leap years, 3 leap years, it has to do with cycles, or the circle, being the 19th. In its first appearance in Genesis, we see the idea of calling something forth. Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. It became evening, and it became morning of one day. So the word kara, to call forth, is another aspect of the kaf. Again, as the 19th letter, it has a gematria of 100. So now we have 10 times 10. So as we begin now in multiples of hundreds, as we continue with the Aleph-Bet, this is the perfect, if you will, 10 times 10 here. Spelled out, it's 186, and full, it's 278. 100 represents the age of Abraham at the birth of Isaac. The idea of go to you, lech lecha, meaning the source of your soul. It also represents the 100 daily blessings that every Jew is supposed to say. King David was told to do this to keep his soldiers from dying. Amidah has 57 blessings, Shacharit 26, Ma'ariv 5 with the meal blessings and hand washing. It is considered to be fairly easy to keep the 100 daily blessings if you just say the prayers and the giving thanks that we're supposed to be doing. It also has to do with the blessings that flow from heaven through the 100 gates of heaven. Makom, which means place, has the same gematria of 186 as the spelled out version of Kof. In its meditation, we meditate on our hidden purpose in the world, how we can look for hidden sparks, for taking the strangeness of the world and investing it with purpose to fulfill our full potential, our 10 times 10, and pass all of our tests. Abraham was given 10 tests and give a new purpose to the world. Meditation on the letter Kaf. The 20th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Resh. It is the number 200, again going up from Kaf as 100. We now jump to 200 as the power of the letters increases exponentially here. In its form, we once again see a bent over person or a head in poverty and servitude, but also in humility. But with the Resh, we have a slightly different aspect of the letter itself, from its meaning and from its negative side. We can also see this as man's representation to bow to idols, the evil man's inclination to bow to idols, which is why the large Resh begins the second commandment and has its back to Kuf, meaning when we turn our back on repentance, we become poor. So the shape is bent over, but from the head, or the intellect. Rosh means head and intellect. The Torah begins from wisdom. Aramaic translation of the first line in Genesis is, in the beginning, God created wisdom. It also means Rosh, or a poor man. The poor one is bent over from his burden. We also bend over to make ourselves understood, as in teaching children in a positive way. A professor or doctor has to teach in a way that can be understood. God bends over to give his wisdom through the Torah. This is alluded to in the first word of the Torah. If permuted, the word Bereshit can also spell Rosh Bayit, the head of the house. God is bending over to fit into the house of this world. The use of intellect is connected to the concept of clarification. The brain has to sort through the bombardment of information and emotion to find meaning. Clarification in Hebrew is beror. The word has two reshes to emphasize the role of intellect in clarifying. The letter resh means rosh, or beginning, and yet it appears close to the end of the Aleph-Bet. Similar to the dalet, which also represents a bent over person, but the dalet has a yad connecting its two lines, meaning the resh's two lines, representing speech and intellect, are used for his own ego. Also, dalet has in mind the world to come, whereas the resh doesn't care. So the resh is the unholy counterpart to dalet. Its mate letter would be the dalet. And the difference is in its negative form here in the resh. It is ego, bent in serving itself rather than serving God. And we see all this in terms of its meanings. The meaning for Rish and Rosh, the idea of the head, or as well as poverty, or you can see dominion and poverty in the two aspects, both high and low. When we choose a context that is negative, we can sink into rish, poverty. Poverty and shame come to him who refuses instruction, but he who heeds reproof shall be honored. Proverbs 13:18. Within the container of rish is the light that enables us to overcome. Rosh, as we said, means head, and if we switch the letters, Asher, we get happiness. When we put God first, we find joy. Ra also means evil, but if we reverse the letters, means to be aware. We can also get Rash, meaning noise, a hint that sound pollution often leads us away from that still small voice. But poverty can be positive when it leads us to humility and selflessness. A cosmic container like the Bet and the Kaf are container of contexts. At the cosmic level, every action, every expressed statement, every thought has simultaneous, multiple valid contexts. Permuted letters, Sari is a prince or a leader, whereas Yesh, there is, has to do with existence. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. A Rasha is a wicked person. Rash is poverty. Seriousness, impression, plan, idea, the spiritual plan we are meant to explore in life. All of these have to do with the Resh. Rosh Yeshiva is the head of a yeshiva. When we add in the light of Aleph, we exchange poverty for holiness. Also connected to the secret of Keter, the crown. Contains the secrets of Bereshit. The poverty of the Resh is worse than the poor person of the Dalet, but turning around from here is easy. The Talmud states there is no poor person except he who is poor in knowledge. The Talmud tells us that the Resh stands for the word Rasha, which means an evil person. We also know that when a wicked person repents, he stands taller than a tzaddik, hence becoming Rosh. There's 4 beginnings in the Aleph-Bet, just like our calendar. Aleph itself, of course, is the first beginning. Phonetically, Hey is the first of all sounds that begin with an H. Script begins with the letter Yod, the tiny dot, when you put pen to paper, and in meaning, Resh is the beginning. These four letters combine to form the word Arya, or lion, the first of the four holy animals in Ezekiel. They can also form the word Yira, which is awe or fear. The double letter, another double letter here, it is the idea of, again, that poverty that is not in service to God leads us into a place of emptiness. But if we put God first, then we can turn that around and bring joy or happiness into our lives. In its first appearance in Genesis, we have in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Be is in, and actually it's in a beginning, or when God began to create. But Reshit is beginning or head. And then also the earth was unformed and desolate, and there was darkness over the face of the abyss. The breath, Ruach, another appearance in Genesis of the letter Resh, is the breath of God, the breath of Elohim hovered above the surface of the water. So there we have two forms of the Resh, or two beginnings of the Resh in Genesis. In its Gematria, the Resh is the number 200, which can be broken down to 20, which can be broken down to 2. Spelled out, it's 510, and in full, it's 890. 200 is considered the upper limit of poverty, 200 zuz. After 199 zuz, one is no longer considered poor. The word tzedakah equals 199. The calculation that I've seen for some of that, what is 199 zuz? So at what point are we no longer considered poor? If we calculate in today's money, to give you an idea, very different from the way the world views this, is $50,000. So the Torah, apparently, or the Talmud at any rate, considers someone who is no longer poor, someone who has in excess of $50,000. So when you're looking to help someone out of poverty, be sure and remember that. The numerical half point of Aleph-Bet is also the 200, since 400 is the full counting. 510, to keep something burning, is a word that comes to the same gematria, or 890 is the complete or full counting of the Omer, the Omer. So all of that has to do with the gematria of the letter Resh. As we meditate on the letter Resh, we want to connect to the idea of the art of clarification, to take in all of the stimulus and order it in a meaningful and purposeful way that gives us understanding of our place in the world and who we are. So we take an inventory, if you will, of ourselves as we meditate on the letter Resh. 21st letter of the Hebrew Aleph-Bet is the Shin, or if the Dagesh dot is on the left, it's a Sin, S sound. It has the gematria of 300. Again, the letter Shin, or Sin. In its design or form, it is the 3 Vowels, with a Yud on top of each one, rising from a common base or point. The 3 flames, fire and transformation. The 3 patriarchs and 4 matriarchs. The 3 groups of Israel, plus the righteous converts. So the idea of that no lie can endure if it's not based on truths. The idea of 3 becoming 4 is also seen. We talked about the white spaces. If you look at the shin and you take a look at the spaces around it, you actually get a 4 pointed shin, 4 flamed shin. So it has to do with the pillars, the 3 pillars of the Sephirot. It's the symmetry of 2 lovers, including God and man, or man with outstretched hands to God. Think about Moses. 3 units combined equaling completeness. The rainbow has 3 primary colors, right and left and middle, as far as 3 primary, if you will, directions. It's the connection of opposites. The tefillin, if you look down at tefillin, you will notice that there is a four-headed shin on one side of the tefillin. It also has to do with the Aaronic blessing, and in the way that the priests held their hands when giving the blessings, they formed the double shin here. For those of you that are Trekkies, you will also notice that this is the greeting that Spock or Vulcans give, live long and prosper, which is in essence the priestly blessing. So there's kind of an interesting connection, and there is indeed a connection there that Leonard Nimoy himself came up with in terms of creating the idea for the Vulcan blessing. Another little interesting side note on that. And also in its earlier form and ancient understanding, it had the idea of teeth, of being able to bite into something. Okay, so those are some of the forms of the shin. In meaning, we have the 2 names of God as Shaddai, as well as Shalom, as sustenance and nurturing, fulfillment, the idea of peace and perfection and mastery. The word shad means a mother's breast milk, and shade means breast, as well as affluence and source of blessing. So we see the sufficiency of God for us is analogous to the mother's breast milk for her infant child, and that is related to God's name El Shaddai. It also has to do with Shana, year, for transitions, for change, symmetry of seasons, cycles, again, we see, the idea of aging. In terms of tooth, tooth also has to do with entropy, or teeth have to do with entropy or aging. The fire of Torah, Esh, meaning the word fire. It's God unchanged, immovable, moving all. The shin also appears on the mezuzah and having to do with bringing peace and serenity to the home. All of that part of the meaning of shin. Negative side, shecher, is meaning falsehood. And again, if you notice, the letters are out of order. The correct order is Kaf, Resh, Shin. And here we have Shin, Kaf, Resh. But the 3 letters adjacent to those show society or gatherings where lies are more likely to be told. Shin should be at the end, following the Kuf and the Resh. Shin is considered the letter of truth, and yet it is the first letter of the word for lie, Shachar. Lies must have truth within them in order to be believed. Truth consumes lies. When the spies began to talk about the land, they started with truthful things from Numbers 13. Shin is the first letter of Song of Songs, written large. Like the Bet in Genesis, Bet and Shin are partners, showing that God's love is the foundation of all creation. We see in the word shomer, to guard, Shema, to hear, shofar, uh, to hear the sounds of the shofar, the ram's horn, tshuv, to turn, from teshuva, to turn around. So Shana, as we mentioned, year, that cycle that we have. So having to do with sound, I'm sorry, with time. Also Shemayim, heaven, the heavens declare. Shekinah, the indwelling glory of God related to work, the Mishkan. So all of that having to do with the letter Shin. First appearance again, just from Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens, Hashamayim, and the earth. The first appearance of the letter Shin. It's a letter representing the light of heaven coming down to the physical realm, or the fire of heaven, that God is with us. The Gematria of Shin is 300. Spelled out, it's 360. And in full, it's 486. The Gematria of Shin at 360, spelled out, is the Gematria of the word Hashanah, which means the year. Deuteronomy 11:12, the land we go to possess is a state of consciousness, complete and full of godliness. This is the land that God cares for. This is the land that the eyes of God are always upon throughout the year, Shana. The Gematria of the word Shmecha and its direct object form, Shimcha, meaning your name, is also 360. This Genesis 12:1 through 3 and 17:5 is the portion where Abraham is told to leave his home. As we leave the land of former growth, we move into new growth and blessing, giving us an additional hay of the root hava, meaning to be. The meaning of this in context of the energy of intelligence of Shin is that our movement into a higher level of God consciousness is a movement away from limitation. In essence, each successive higher level of God consciousness we live in sends away more and more of our limitations. Gematria of the word Yashan, which means old, is also 360. Quote, and you shall eat old store and remove the old because of the new, Leviticus 26:10. The idea is that we will have so much prosperity that we'll have to remove the old to make room for the new. This is the blessing of moving into new God consciousness, the God consciousness of Shin. Shin has a numerical value of 300, has a close relationship to Gimel, whose numerical value is 3. So this is Gimel multiplied times 10 times 10. And this is reinforced by the shape of the V, of the Shin rather, which has the 3 columns. Shin also has a close relationship to Lamed, whose numerical value is 30. So 10 times 30. To understand these relationships, consider that Gimel is the archetype of nourishment, Lamed is the archetype of nourishment projected into physical existence. Its meaning is teaching and purpose. So Shin is the projection of Gimel into the cosmos, so has the meaning of cosmic nourishment. Thus, it would be the changes that we cause, the teaching that we do, the learning that we do in this world, which serves as nourishment for the cosmos and for the world to come, frankly. Meditation of the Shin, as we look into the 3 flames of Shin, we imagine the 3 patriarchs within each one and listen for what they might have to say. Abraham will speak words of encouragement. Isaac will impart instruction. And Jacob will give you insights into who you are and what your purpose is. So as you focus on the Shin, focus on what the 3 patriarchs have to say to you. Our last letter, the 22nd letter of the Hebrew Aleph-Bet, is the letter Tav. It is the number 400. Tav is also the 6th, the last of the Begad Kafat, the dotted letters that can change sounds with or without the dot. In modern Hebrew, the sound remains the same, the letter T. The letter Tav is described as the shape of a seal or a stamp. Its meaning is a code or a note or stamp or impression. God stands for truth, and his seal is his truth and providence and presence in every point of reality. A dalet joined to a nun, and that gives us the word for judgment or deen, and also Dan for law, and also for DNA, the idea of the DNA sequences. Emet is the word for truth. Each letter stands on 2 feet. So we see that truth must be complete from Aleph to Tav and be balanced on a firm foundation. It can stand on its own 2 feet. Ultimately, truth must be able to withstand judgment, din, as well as scrutiny. The letter is made up of a dalet and a nun, which spells Dan, the last of the tribes, to march in the desert. Their task was to pick up lost articles. The Tav is the cleaning up of what was left behind. The impression of what was left behind is often all we have left of the past. In its meaning, we see that the Tav appears as the last letter of the first word in Genesis, and that if we take the first 3 words, Bereshit bara Elohim, and take a look at the last letters, we see the 3 letters for the word for truth, Emet. The last letter of the first 3 words, and also the last day of creation, Shabbat, in the last 3 words, that God made to do, spells Emet. It has to do with a mark, sign, or label, an impression or code. It is the truth. It is the true law. It's the continuation of present to end to beginning again. It is, again, the cycle. Tofa, the energy intelligence of Tav is an effect, not a cause. It is the end, not the beginning. Tema is a wonder or a surprise. Tohu is desolation, formless, nothingness. Tefillah is prayer, service of the heart. Teshuvah is to return. It is the greatest gift that we are given, the ability to repent, to turn again, to return, and to do teshuvah. We talked about the tribe of Dan being the last tribe, picking things up, that the letter Tav has to do with stamps, things that mark are markers in our life, but it also has to do with picking up lost things. And the idea of reincarnation falls into this letter and its essence. The idea that we are given the opportunity through reincarnation to pick up the lost parts of our lives that we neglect to pick up in any one lifetime. The idea of God's fossils are in every point of reality. Dan also means judgment, which is God's stamp on the world. Death is mavet, which ends with Tav, the end that is a beginning. Death is not the end, it is the beginning. Tikkun has to do with repairing or transforming, and Tzaddik, as we talked about, is also dealing with the righteous one, and we see within that the sound of the T, but of course not the Tav itself. That is the Tzaddik. But there's a relationship between the 2 sounds. Once again, taking a look at the first appearance of the letter Tav in Genesis, Tohu, Vibohu, Tahom. The earth was unformed and desolate, and there was Tahom, darkness, over the surface of the abyss. The breath of Elohim hovered over the surface of the water. So the idea of how do you get from unformed and darkness to righteousness. Tav is both the beginning and the ultimate end of who we are. Our beginning is unformed potential, and it is up to us, with the help of God, to allow ourselves to be a vessel of light. The very next verse has God speaking light into the tohu, and that is our mission in this world. The Gematria of Tav is 400, spelled out 406, and in full 428. Tav numerically is related to Abraham buying Sarah's burial place for 400 shekels of silver. This is where Abraham took possession of all of Israel, which is said to be 400 parsecs by 400 parsecs. 400 years of exile in Egypt. The God of Israel, the people of Israel, the land of Israel, and the Torah of Israel, all equal the four letters in the Tetragrammaton, the name of God. 406 also related to the word for the sign, or for in holiness, or to proclaim peace. 428 has to do with the phrase in the midst. We exist in the midst. Our last meditation for the letter Tav is to think about every ending that leads to a new beginning, and every cycle that repeats itself. God's impression and truth is stamped in every point of reality. See that, envision that, including our minds and souls and heart. So that concludes the class, Mystical Hebrew, Language of Creation, as we took a look at the last four letters, Kof to Tav. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I will have additional, I don't know that we'll call them classes, but additional presentations where I'll cover a little bit more in terms of just a very brief overview of the letters, again, very similar to what I had done in the first class. And hopefully all of that will enable you to see in a little bit more or renew within yourself the memory of the things that we've talked about. We've covered a lot of information, and some of it may have mattered, some of it may not have mattered. The point is, as you come back to this many times, to these teachings and these understandings, and more importantly, as you study them yourselves, reading the books, reading articles, watching other videos that deal with it. What I want you to see, and my goal and my heart's purpose for doing this, is to show you how powerful this language is. There is no other language like the Hebrew language. It is God's language, and I hope Mashiach comes soon. And when he does, then we will certainly all be speaking this language. But until then, in order to have a relationship and understanding of God's word to us through his Torah, being able to read it in the Hebrew, understand it in the Hebrew, is so important. It's so powerful in our lives. And I just want you to have a love for this incredible language. So again, think of all of this in terms of an overview. Nothing that you needed to memorize or to remember, but just you needed to let it just soak in. So you may have to watch the classes again, but as you do that, remember, you're just letting it soak in. You're not trying to learn anything. You're just trying to experience it. So again, as I add some additional presentations, it will be to present another way for this beautiful language to kind of soak into you. But none of this replaces the hard work of learning the Hebrew language. You begin with the first class that I offered through the Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew book. I am working on and will probably present. It may be a bit of a while, not too long, I hope. And I will also present the First Hebrew Primer book as we move you into a further understanding of Hebrew grammar and Hebrew learning. But all of this you can do on your own or in other ways if you are fortunate enough. And one of the reasons I offer these classes is because no one in my area is fortunate enough to have a Hebrew teacher, to have any rabbis here that are apparently willing to teach these things. So if you live in an area where you are fortunate enough to do that, then by all means, please ignore my classes and go visit your local rabbi and have them teach you. If you're not connected, get connected. Even if you're not Jewish, in many cases, especially if you go to Chabad and other Hasidic synagogues, you will probably find someone there that's willing to at least spend some time with you and help you to understand if that's your depth of desire is to learn that. So all of that to close out this class. Thank you for joining me. Watch for future presentations as we continue to fall in love with the language of creation. This has been Tam Averna on Yeshiva B'nai Noach. Shalom.